First of all, I just want to welcome everyone. I'm so excited to do this webinar with Pedro. He's going to be, taking the lead on it, but yeah, very exciting. So thank you all for joining us. And yeah, we'll get the tech stuff sorted out, but I'll just flip it over to you, Pedro, so we can stay on track for time here. And I will monitor any questions or concerns throughout this, and we'll have a little Q&A session at the end here.
Fantastic. Well, welcome everybody. I am super excited for this. This is our first time doing this in a very long time. And so I'm going to take you guys today through an interesting presentation. There's going to be a lot of videos, a lot of examples. And so if you have any questions, please drop your questions in the Q&A box at the top. That Sky is going to either try to respond to them in real time, or if she can't, she would just kind of hold it to the end. We're gonna have a Q&A about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for a bit of a Q&A. And so yeah, just start popping them in throughout as they come along, and Sky's gonna compile them for the Q&A at the end. So yes, let's get started. Super excited about this, guys. So the webinar is called Marketing Insights, Winning with Emerging Trends. Before we jump in, for those folks that don't know who I am and don't know much about WJ, I'll start a little bit, give a bit of an intro. So my name is Pedro Porto Alegre. I was born and raised in São Paulo, Brazil. I've come to Canada as an exchange student many, many years ago, around 16 years ago, and went to Red Deer, out of all places. It was a fantastic place to live, and I had a great experience there. Ended up playing basketball in college at the Red Deer College at the time. That was the Red Deer Polytechnic. Lived in Edmonton the summers, Calgary, Lethbridge, and most recently was living in Toronto. Lived there for just under 3 years, where I was working at PepsiCo's head office. So my career, right out after school, I ended up joining PepsiCo here in Calgary in a sales function. Led some teams here in Calgary and Lethbridge, and then went into data analytics, before relocating to Toronto to go into the head office, marketing function, and did some brand marketing work there with some amazing brands, and most importantly, some amazing people, where I got to learn from some of the best in the game. And so Ruffles was my baby when I was there most recently, and then decided to move back to Calgary. When I came back, joined a corporate finance firm located here in downtown Calgary called Kluani Partners as a marketing director and business development. And then most recently, about a year and a half ago, joined WJ. So WJ is an independent marketing and advertising agency located here in Calgary. It's been around for about 20 years. Our latest iteration is the new logo that you get to see. We launched last year. And yeah, we are independent, full service. And so we like to do these sorts of things, to share some of the knowledge, some of the things that we've been learning with everybody else. On the side as well, I run a newsletter called the Marketing Chronicles newsletter, where it's a weekly newsletter where I talk about marketing topics, particularly strategy and creativity, and share some things, some inspiration of some amazing work that I've been seeing in the market. So that's a little bit about me and WJ. But let's get started. Let's jump into the content of what we're here to do today. So I'm going to start out kind of telling a bit of a story about how we got here, looking back in history. And then I'm going to divide the presentation into different sections, where each section is a topic. And within that topic, I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges in the market that's driving this trend, if you like to call it. And what does that mean? What does that trend mean for you, marketer on the line, or business owner on the line? How can you apply it? What are some interesting examples that we've seen? And then at the end, we're gonna have the Q&A. So let's jump in. I'd like to start this with a quote from one of the great ad men of all time, Bill Barnback. So Bill Barnback, he was one of the founders of DDB back in the 50s or 60s. And he's credited with spearheading the creative revolution in advertising in the 1960s. Because he kind of introduced this concept in this collaborative environment between art directors and copywriters. And so that approach, became the standard in the industry because of the amazing work, that his agency was pumping out. But I like to kind of look back at history because I think history tells us a lot about what matters versus what doesn't matter. And Bill Barnback had a great quote that goes like this. So human nature hasn't changed in 1,000,000 years. You won't even change in the next 1,000,000 years. Only the superficial things have changed. It is fashionable to talk about the changing man, but a communicator must be concerned with the unchanging man. So very deep, especially for us modern beings today, where there's a lot of change happening at the speed of lights, and we often get, caught up on what's going on. But the way I interpret this is trends, technology, what's fashionable is always fleeting, right? It doesn't stick. That's just the reality. Things are moving too fast, especially today. But the common denominator is human nature, right? And that doesn't change. And if you can understand human nature, you'll be able to create work that moves people. And so this isn't a particularly revolutionary concept, although it might sound original in today's terms. But the first time that this idea kind of came to the fore was in the 19th century. And so I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of classic literature into this webinar because I find it to be a great source of insights as marketers, understanding the human nature. So I'm not sure how many of you have read this classic book, Fathers and Sons by Ivan Turgenev. He was a Russian novelist, poet, and playwright. He wrote this book in 1862. So it was just, during that period of, just after the Industrial Revolution, I guess you could call it. But it was also a period of significant upheaval in Russian society. It's with the emancipation of the serfs. And so the serfdom system was I guess you could sort of consider as an iteration of slavery that took place in Russia. And there was a lot of conflict between the new generation coming up that wanted to see change in Russian society and what was going on. And so there was a bit of a clash between generations. People that had lived in Russia, the older folks that were in Russia for a very long time, and they valued the traditional values of Russian society. And you had the younger people coming up. And so in this book, you get to experience the first generational conflict that we continue to see today. It's nothing new, the stuff that we see today, that we see in the 60s. But the book kind of centers around this character called Bazarov. He's a nihilist. He's a young person that rejects traditions, right? And he advocates for like scientific rationalism. And so very different from, his friends, Arkady, which is a friend of his, that he goes spend, the summer with in his father's property. And his father and his uncle represent a traditional generation. And so, when we look back, Turgenev was writing about this in the 19th century, right? And we kind of fast forward to today, not much has changed, right? We continue to see generational conflict in our society. Humans are not like Bernbeck said, humans don't change. We've been the same creature for a very long time. And history, there's, I guess, two ways to look at history. Some folks would like to look at history as a linear, story. But, people that study history, historians, they would argue that history is cyclical, right? And so, what was happening in the 19th century Russia, happened several times during the 20th century. With the counter-revolution in the 60s, fighting against the war in Vietnam. And then you kind of fast forward to most recently with Brexit, you had the young people kind of rejecting that, whereas the more traditional kind of folks in British society for it. And then you kind of fast forward to even more recently, young people really kind of standing up and protesting when global warming protests and asking the establishment to take action. And so very common themes that we continue to see over and over again, right? Is cyclical. Humans are the common denominator in these cycles that we kind of experience. But what does change? What does change is technology and how we adopt it, right? So as Barmbek said, the latest tech for him at the time was television, right? And he said, or there was an interview that he talks about how he had this great device in his office, a TV, right? But he wasn't concerned with the TV. He was concerned with humans and how do you understand them to create work that moves people. And so tech doesn't fundamentally change human nature. What you want to do as a communicator, which we all are as marketers, is understand how people are using these tools. Because these nuances in the grand scheme of things, they matter on how you talk to them, how you reach them, but that human nature is still the common denominator. It's not a variable. And so even when you look at this graph, as you can see, technology is additive. They don't substitute each other. So even if you look with the rise of color TV, and then you have the computer, it's not that computer replaced TV. It was another medium through which us human beings, experienced and society and communicated, with others. So it's easy to get sidetracked about what's the next big thing. Humans are very stubborn, and we're stubborn and we resist change. And so as marketers, we can often get kind of caught up spending too much time worrying about what's the next big thing, right? Bitcoin, AI, the metaverse. These are some most recent examples that kind of generated quite a craze. But the reality is, when we look at all of this in our industry, particularly marketers, I'm speaking more specifically to marketers, we love killing things, right? And so there's whenever new tech comes along, we say TV is dying, right? TV is dead, right? What else is dead? Broad reach mass advertising is dead. Now it's the era of hyper targeting and personalization. The Segway, God, who remembers when the Segway came out? It was going to revolutionize how we moved around cities, right? Cars will be a thing of the past. My favorite one is during COVID. We all believed that we were going to come out of COVID a gentler and kinder society, right? We really believed that, right? Twitter's dead. In 2017, people thought Twitter was dying then, right? And then you fast forward to today, Twitter was dying that night when Elon Musk bought it. So, it's a cyclical thing. Clubhouse came along. The new social platform is going to kill Instagram. Or better yet, advertising is dead. Brands are dead. We love to kill things. We have this stubborn habit of getting caught up with a shiny new thing and think that the things that have been the foundation of our communications, of our human nature are dying. But the reality is this isn't happening. This doesn't happen. None of this actually happened, took place. TV still is your best medium for mass reach advertising, believe it or not. Hyper targeting is highly ineffective. It costs a lot of money and the return isn't that great. Twitter is still going somehow, still going. And we sure as hell didn't come out of COVID kinder, right? And advertising is still going strong. So, we always got to check ourselves a little bit, when it comes to the new trends. And that's why I'm very cautious with trends and predictions. These things take time to take hold. And so if humans don't change all that much, then what does, right? What does? Well, what does are the tools that we interact with, right? And which then affect our tactical executions as marketers, as business people, whatever business you run. And so when you kind of take a step back and now we're kind of diving more on what does all of this mean, this preamble, from a marketing standpoint, is that if the tools are the ones that change, not us, humans, the consumers, then strategy fundamentally is a very stable piece of our plans, right? Strategy remains intact, safe and sound. Sure, you got to adjust your strategy to reflect, the times, but fundamentally, your strategy needs to concern itself with people or your customers, your consumers, right? And how you're gonna communicate with them, move them. That's when you go into tactics and you start kind of parsing through this new technology, or, quite frankly, using old technology, which is still very much present today. So today, I'd like to share with you guys some of the challenges that I'm seeing in the market that are nudging some of the strategies and how they might need to adapt over the next 5 to 10 years. Again, don't want to put a number exactly because I am a horrible forecaster, and everybody that claims to be a great forecaster knows damn well that that is a difficult thing to do, including economists. But I'm going to take a crack at it today, and I'm going to see, how you guys feel about it. So we're going to take a look from a very high level. Okay, so let's kind of pull ourselves out of the weeds here, and let's look at what's going on through the lenses of an astronaut, right? We're detached from what's going on. And so let's jump in. 5 problems. We have 5 problems. I'm going to start with the first one here, which is should be well known for those folks that are working in multinationals that do have a more sophisticated like C-suite, but even smaller businesses also will experience the effects of this. Is that out of all the kind of foundation traditional C-suite roles, the chief marketing officer role is one that has experienced the lowest level. It has reached the lowest level of tenure in more than a decade, right? And sure, of course, the chief sustainability officer and chief inclusion officer, these are new C-suite roles, so they naturally have lower tenures, just because they're fairly new. But when you look at how the CMO stacks up relative to their peers, they're the lowest level in terms of, every 4 years, a CMO's fired, right? And so, we might be asking, well, what does that mean to me managing a brand? Well, if that's taking place at the top, strategy that kind of is formulated with the CMO and the C-suite and the directors has a trickle-down effect, right? And it's going to impact you actually getting the work done and executing the work. The great Peter Field, he is one of the kind of godfathers of marketing effectiveness. Him and Les Binet have been analyzing cases, thousands of cases at the IPA, which is the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising in the UK. And what they noticed is a lot of the cases that are being submitted to the IPA into award shows and things like that, they're increasingly being optimized for short-term effects. So the way to do that is like, hey, what were the KPIs being measured? And you can tell whether a KPI is a long-term KPI versus short-term KPI. And so we see that short-termism is really taking hold in a lot of the work that's taking place. And this is directly correlated with the short tenure that you kind of see that's taking place with the CMO role in a lot of organizations. And so I'd like to give you a bit of an example, a very recent example of this taking place, and it got the spotlight, scared the crap out of a lot of marketers, because it was a bit of a sign that, yeah, this is happening everywhere. And so I'm not sure if you guys remember the case with Snoop Dogg and Solo Stove. So I'll give you a bit of a background on the story. So one day, Snoop Dogg goes to social media and posts this, that he was giving up smoke. He said, after much consideration and conversation with my family, I've decided to give up smoke. Please respect my privacy at this time. I was on X and I was like, holy crap, how? This guy actually runs cannabis companies. Like, this is a major story. It actually shook, a lot of people in the industry, like, holy crap, is this really happening? But what happened about a week later, it was a prank. It was sort of a prank that caught a lot of attention. And then Solo Stove released this fantastic spot that explained what he meant by giving up smoke.
I have an announcement. I'm giving up smoke. I know what you're thinking. Snoop, smoke is kind of your whole thing. But I'm done with it. Done with the coughing and my clothes smelling all sticky icky. I'm going smokeless. Solo Stove fixed fire. They took out the smoke. Clever.
So just a fantastic play that garnered a lot of earned media, you know, because of Snoop Dogg has such a broad audience, and you know, people that had never heard of this brand, Solo Stove, now they knew who Solo Stove was, right? Just a great brand play that, you know, garnered a lot of attention. But what happened next was what caught everybody's attention even more. Shortly after, Solo Brand, so the company that owns, you know, Solo Stove, ended up firing their CEO. Because there was a, you know, the Snoop Dogg kind of move, the campaign that they did not lead to a sales lift as they had originally planned. And so this is a classic example of measuring campaigns that are meant to yield long-term effects through short-term KPIs, right? And as marketers, you know, the work from Les Binet that came out, you know, in 2013 called The Long and the Short of It, they make it very clear. They studied this, they've looked at thousands of examples, and they said, look, you know, brand building takes time. It is additive. It compounds over time. And so naturally, if you do a sales activation, let's say a promotion, a discount, if you sell, like, let's say, you know, chips at a store, and you run a promotion, two chips for $6, you're going to get a sales spike naturally. But the moment you turn that off, you turn the advertising about that, turns it off, you know, sales lift goes down. And so what brand building does, it actually builds basically, it reduces price sensitivity on your brand. So that means that you can become more profitable over time. You can actually increase your prices, and people will not stop buying from you, right? And that's what brand building does. And naturally, as you build a really strong brand, you also gain market share. And so long-term cannot be ignored, right, for short-term metrics. And short-termism, what we're seeing today in our industry, is a threat. It is naturally a threat to that fundamental truth. And so the key lesson in this first problem that I share with you guys is that we should, you know, brand managers and business owners who simply cannot sacrifice long-term growth for a short-term hit. That is lesson number one from the things I'm observing. Let's go now to topic number two. So after World War II, the TV set became a major medium of communication, albeit a one-way form of communication for most North American homes. And this actually ended up spreading much broader, right? Of course. People used to sit around the living room at night, tune into the Ed Sullivan Show. For those of you that haven't seen that, there's the episodes are on YouTube, which was kind of like a bit of a talk show, I guess you could call it. To get their daily dose of entertainment. You know, while the parents were reading the newspaper, of course, we had TV, you know, print, radio. And so you fast forward to today, and the media landscape looks a lot different, right? You see what, you know, what media professionals call it, the fragmentation of media, right? And so beyond the point that we could never have imagined. And so, you know, you know, print effectively has become digital nowadays. So very few people subscribe to, you know, like the physical newspaper. You know, we read them, we subscribe digital subscriptions, for example. There's obviously notable exceptions like the New Yorker, the magazine, right? Some people still buy the physical stuff. But mobile really started gaining the lion's share of media in terms of time spent, right? We're talking about back in 2022, people would spend on average about 13 hours a day consuming media, right? And so that includes your computer, TV, radio, print, mobile, and other devices. But when you look at mobile, even mobile itself continues to fragment itself. So if I ask you guys here on this call, what are your top 3 apps on your phone? If I ask 20 of you, I'd probably get 20 different answers. We each have our own different you know, windows into the world, right? And so And so there's a major fragmentation taking place. And so if you look back at how people, used to, move through the funnel, I guess we'd call it, from, information consumption from awareness all the way to purchase, you could look something like this. You watch something on TV, and then maybe you hear about it on the radio on the way to work. You maybe see, on the newspaper on your daily commute, you kind of read it. Maybe it's somebody selling a new pair of shoes, a new innovation. Then you go to the store and you buy that shoe. Right? Very oversimplified, but it wasn't very complex, like the media landscape. But you fast forward to the early 2000s, you start seeing how people are consuming information very differently. And so you go from, maybe you see something on TV, and then you kind of see an ad on Instagram, and then there's an influencer talking about the product that will take you then to an online store. But then, hey, TikTok as well comes in and influences a lot of the stuff that you're seeing on TV and on Instagram. But hey, you go into the online store, you sign up to a newsletter, and then next thing you know, you're getting, retargeted ads via display or email. And then you see an out of home on the way to work one day, and then you see an activation taking place downtown, let's say, that you get to engage with that brand. And then maybe, you end up choosing to go to the store, a physical store or online store. So as you can see, it's gotten a lot more complex, the communications, environment and the planning of this stuff nowadays is a lot more complicated. All right. And so the traditional advertising model, which was about kind of interrupting people to kind of sharing, their product, it was just the tip of the iceberg. There's many, many ways for people to experience a brand nowadays. And so I'll give you an example from, the 90s, and I want to turn a little bit now to one medium of communication, which is gaming, today. Back in the 90s, and if you owned a Nintendo 64, you would play, the 007 GoldenEye, right? In this case, the Super Nintendo. But, video games, as we'll see shortly, are quickly becoming a major medium of communication among people under 40. It's no longer just young kids, right? And so while in the 90s, people used to play 007 at home with friends on the weekend, you fast forward to today, people are playing Call of Duty every night with friends and strangers all around the world, right? And so it's a new window into a world that is increasingly gaining more share. And so I want to share a great example of a brand, a ketchup brand. We're talking about Heinz here, and they found a way to insert themselves in the conversation in this very fragmented media landscape through a very clever way. And the campaign, this took place actually, this was done by an agency in São Paulo, my hometown in Brazil, by an agency called Gut. And it was just a fantastic, clever way to engage with their audience. So I'm just gonna share the case study.
These were games back then. Slow, simple, chill. And if needed, we just hit the pause button. These are games now. Fast-paced, complex, professional, and no pause button. When do these people even eat? They don't. Because if you bite, you die. Bite, die.
Oh my God!
Bite, die. No! See? So Heinz teamed up with Call of Duty, the #1 game in the world, to figure out the best spots to snack safely on their brand new map, and leaked it to top influencers from around the world. Using burger wraps. This is Heinz Hidden Spots.
Now this is hidden.
I'm gonna kick back and dig into my burger.
Perfect spot. We got the nice view. We can eat our burger in peace. No one will find us here. Who would think to find us over here?
O negócio que envolve o lanche aqui é o mapa, velho.
Pegaram uma vez para minha hamburguesa.
Effectuer ce kill si je n'avais pas eu mon ketchup Heinz.
Heinz ketchup is giving us energy.
Hidden spot, eat a chip.
In only a few hours, the gaming community got hungry for more, and hundreds of spots were mapped out organically, not only in Call of Duty's new map, but also in other blockbuster games.
the most secret spot on the map. You can actually enter these waters.
Espérate, tengo que morder mi hamburguesa en el hidden spot.
¡Hala! ¡Ten ammo!
Pass the high, soldier.
Hunger terminated.
Mission accomplished, soldier.
Heinz hidden spots. Eat burgers, not bullets.
Let me eat my burger in peace!
Just a fantastic organic, way to integrate your brand that seemingly would have absolutely zero connection with Call of Duty, but like really understanding your customer and understanding that they had a pain point and really meeting them where they're at. And so to me, that's lesson number 2. As the media landscape continues to get more and more fragmented, you need to meet your customers where they're at. And those places are not always obvious, right? And so proper media planning, of course, that sort of very complex work is where magic typically happens. This is called connections planning. So just a great example there by Heinz. Next up, I'm going to ask you guys a question. If you know the answer to this, drop it on the chat. What does this date mean in the business world? Is a date that fundamentally changed how we do things. If you know what this date means, please drop it on the chat. Or in the Q&A in this case. This day means the day that ChatGPT-3 went live to the public and fundamentally changed everything, right? To this day, we're in 2024 now, and we're still talking about it. It's stuck around, not a trend, right? This stuff is here to stay. When you look at what happened with the adoption of ChatGPT, it has been the fastest to reach 1 million users out of any other company. It's unbelievable. You look at Netflix, it took them about 3.5 years to reach 1 million users. Instagram took 2.5 months, and people never thought that was ever going to be beat. Well, it took 5 days for ChatGPT. Just an incredible technology, and people really saw the usage for it. And the companies, that really were tied with AI, such as, of course, NVIDIA. It's the most, probably the hottest stock, in the world today. And then, of course, Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, the parent company of Google. All of them really kind of seeing a big boost, in the price. And so obviously there is quite a bit of interest and adoption in this space. But with that also came a lot of questions, right? People thinking that, hey, this is the end. We're walking towards an AI apocalypse, right? Sam Altman's second coming sparks new fears of the AI apocalypse. Again, humanity going extinct. Even philosophers like Noam Chomsky, really making his case around why he doesn't think that there is a true promise around this type of stuff. And so people start really worrying about the singularity, when AI is going to surpass all of the collective human knowledge and make us their slaves, right? And so obviously, I'm not here to say whether that is incorrect or not. It's obviously too early to tell. But what took place actually is people are starting to use this technology in their daily lives. And so a great example here is an artist that used AI to win the Colorado State Fair's annual art competition. And they're rightfully, pissed off a bunch of quote unquote real artists, like human artists, right? Meanwhile, what was taking place everywhere on the internet, a lot of grifters flooding the internet, selling new AI courses, tips, hacks, newsletters, ways to make money, and so on. You just, nothing new here. Like, this takes place every time there's a new technology, somebody jumps on and start trying to make a quick buck on it. But what also took place is a lot of mass confusion, right? What's real, what's not? This, AI generated image of the Pope. We know the scandal that took place with Taylor Swift. A person used a deep fake of Taylor Swift to create pornographic imagery of Taylor Swift, and that led to a congressional, action, in the United States. Drake most recently, he used AI to, imitate Tupac's voice in a diss track and had to take it down. So a lot of gray areas and lines that we're trying to make sense of. But marketers that kind of were able to, sift the noise from what's real, they were working on some interesting stuff. So the international spirits giant Diageo has, co-developed this AI tool with the aim of stimulating creative innovation and speeding up the package design process. And so you would kind of put some information here, and AI will pump out a bunch of, ideas around packaging. Of course, it doesn't replace the work of the packaging agencies that they use, but it really stimulated conversation and innovation. Meanwhile, Coca-Cola got really creative, and they launched a campaign, an ad around their global platform called the Real Magic, where they celebrate the real magic of humanity. But they, threw a twist in there with AI, where there was this person drinking a Coke in a museum, in a school kind of tour, and then all these iconic pieces of artwork start kind of jumping out of the page and engaging with him, and that was all used, through usage of AI. So very interesting stuff. But to me, there's one, in my opinion, that is been the most innovative usage of AI I've seen in advertising today, and is the Serena Williams Never Done Evolving short film. So I'm not sure how many of you have heard about this, but this is a great example of a brand understanding the assignment. And so basically what they did, this was an 8.5-minute film called Never Done Evolving that, Nike leveraged AI to create a matchup between Serena when she won her first Grand Slam in 1999, the US Open, and then at the time, her most recent one, the 2017 Australian Open. And so this was part of Nike's 50th anniversary celebrations that really saw, the two Williams, the young Serena and the older Serena, playing each other for over 130,000 games and 5,000 matches. And then they broadcasted the final game to the public on YouTube on August 11th of, I believe it was 2022. And it was just an amazing kind of usage of AI. And so I just gotta play a quick clip of what this looked like.
Serena Williams here.
I'm just so grateful because, yeah, you got me here.
On August 9th, 2022, Serena Williams announced her retirement. 2 days later, Nike released a year-long study, a showcase of what it takes to stay on top for over 2 decades. From fear, insecurity, nervousness, to power, experience, mental toughness. This is Never Done Evolving, featuring Serena Williams, an AI study in the form of avatars that reveals the evolution needed to become the greatest of all time. We analyzed all data and footage from official tournaments throughout Serena's career. Machine learning was able to model each era's playing style, decision-making, shot selection, reactivity, recovery, and agility, creating the most accurate virtualization ever done with an athlete. Serena's avatar's data is being used to improve techniques for young athletes and product technology. It's a first-of-its-kind approach in the sports industry. To make it accessible and inspiring to everyone in the world, we turned the study into a live virtual match starring 17-year-old Serena, the age she won her first Grand Slam, against 35-year-old Serena, the age she won her 23rd Grand Slam. The game was the result of more than 130,000 games generated using vid-to-player technique, developed by Stanford University. At every point one, Josh Appel showcases the study's main insights.
Well, you can just see the power on these serves from 2017 Serena Williams.
We're all extremely passionate about sport. When we look at the data we capture, there's beauty in that. The lines and curves, it's like a symphony.
The game broke all Nike's organic views records on YouTube and spread across mass media courts.
I mean, this level of excellence is kept over so many decades is just...
Yeah. I feel it's more of like an evolution of Serena.
Again, just a different level of work, right? And so, the big lesson I take from what's going on today, and we're still very much in the thick of it, is that, hey, you can get busy doing, your social media posts with it, copy, etc. But the reality is great work still takes great people to do. And so my personal kind of view and prediction on this, what's happening in the short term is that, hey, AI, at least the direction it's going, will make average work free. That's okay. But great work still going to require great humans to make. Okay, moving on. Let's talk a little bit about gaming. So the gaming industry, of course, has evolved quite a bit from its early days, in 1972, when it was a lot of arcade. And then we started kind of seeing consoles coming on, PCs, mobile, and with each phase, we saw revenue surges, right? With each, whenever mobile gaming came along, right, we kind of saw now, today, most recently, we're at about $85 billion of revenues in mobile alone. And so there's been lots of key advancements in the gaming world. And so from the Super Nintendo in 1985 to PlayStation in 1994, all the way to the iPhone in 2007, significantly boosting, industry revenue. And so the way that people interact with games obviously changed, along with it. And so when you look at mobile today, everybody has, a phone in their hands and they get to play with it. And so with the promise, when we start seeing games like Pokemon Go in 2016, I'm not sure how many of you played that game. People thought that was gonna just completely take over, and it did for a period of time, and it kind of died out a little bit. But it kind of opened the doors to a way of gaming that's more social and interactive. And all of this kind of is leading, when people look forward in the gaming industry, we're just seeing like a really strong kind of outlook. The CAGR of this industry is just 12% from 2023 to 2030. Those are the projections. And so a lot of future in this segment, particularly mobile gaming. And when you look at, people that grew up playing games in the 90s, I was one of them. I had my first game was a Saga, and it was a Nintendo 64. Now me in my 30s, I'm still playing video games, right? And so what you see now, people in the 90s who are now 30 all the way to 50, the demographics of gamers is expanded quite a bit. It's no longer just a thing for teenagers, right? And what's happening now is film and movie companies are starting to notice there's an opportunity to turn some of those iconic games into films, right? And so, but the reality is most games make for very bad movies, because a game you spend, dozens of hours playing it and you try to condense it all into 90 minutes. It's really tough. But, what you start seeing is actually, some studios thinking a little bit outside of the box. A great example here is The Last of Us, which is a very famous game for PlayStation, developed by Naughty Dog, and being turned into a series. So it's not, stuck to only 90 minutes. It was probably, 8 to 10 hours worth of content, a story, and filmed right here in Cabo. So as Calgarians, very proud of this show, of course. But when you kind of take a look at this is just a success of a gaming turned into movies. But there's other ways that games interacted with properties and brands. So if you look back, back in the 90s, you had Pepsi Man, which was probably one of the first, I guess, very branded games that you kind of saw, where you needed to avoid obstacles, running, dashing, jumping around and collecting cans of Pepsi. And then came, arguably my favorite at the time was the Tony Hawk Pro Skater, where, brands like Vans, in this case, right, that you can see on the picture, striking very lucrative deals with Activision and Tony Hawk, still making royalties from these games. To now, we kind of come full circle with Roblox, and this is an example here in Canada of Tim Hortons, one of our favorites for folks that are not from Canada and the Scots, our go-to, coffee shop here in Canada, creating a Tim Hortons world within Roblox. And these are becoming easier and easier to do, right? Back in the day, creating the Pepsi Man game was a huge endeavor, right? Now creating the Tim Hortons world, it's very doable. It's achievable for big and small brands. Roblox just opened up kind of the market to creating games. And so I want to tell you guys a bit of an example of how a brand used games in a very organic manner to insert themselves into the conversation. and this is Wendy's. So Wendy's prides itself in being always fresh, never using frozen beef. And when they learned that Fortnite was launching a new game mode where it was pizza versus burgers, they kind of saw a way in because they noticed that the burger shops in Fortnite had freezers in the back room. And so I'll show you guys what they did, which is extremely clever, very organic way to insert themselves into the conversation.
Let's now talk Fortnite, shall we? It's the newest video game craze, spreading fast among kids, college kids, even celebrities.
Kids are nuts for this Fortnite.
Fortnite has taken over the gaming world, becoming the most streamed game on Twitch ever. But brands are left out of the action, either tweeting from the sidelines or paying big bucks for in-game sponsorships. So when Fortnite announced a new event called Food Fight between Team Pizza and Team Burger, Wendy's saw an organic way in. We found out Team Burger stored their beef in freezers. And Wendy's doesn't do frozen beef. So we got on Twitch, chose a character with red hair and pigtails, dropped into the game, and instead of killing other players, we started destroying burger freezers. Again and again and again, for 9 hours straight. We also declared our mission on Twitter, sending hundreds of thousands of gamers to Twitch to watch us play. And soon other players stopped killing each other and started killing burger freezers with us.
Hey, Wendy's, dude, let's go!
Top Twitch streamers took notice.
I saw a Wendy's stream over here, dude.
Oh, you smacking the burgers, freezers?
This shit's lit. Bro, this kind of stuff keeps the game fresh.
Thank you so much for coming to the stream, Wendy.
News outlets were talking about it. Even Twitch posted a highlight reel of Wendy's best freezer kills. Then, our own competitors showed us some respect. But most importantly, the game developers removed the freezers from every burger restaurant, meaning Wendy's had rid Fortnite of frozen beef forever.
So again, just a very organic, cheap way to insert yourself into the conversation. And so I know that for a lot of smaller companies, gaming sounds like such a far-fetched world. But with Roblox and interesting ways, Twitch, where there's a lot of streaming taking place, there are, ways to do it, whether you're big or small. And so when I kind of take a look back at this topic, virtual worlds are out of sight, but they're gaining share of mind. So something that as marketers, we definitely need to pay attention to. The final topic I want to talk about is about brand identity. So I'll start here. So Bass is Bass Brewery. If you're not from the UK, this is a very famous beer in the UK that was registered as a trademark in 1876. And on the right-hand side here, you have Lyle's Golden Syrup. So first sold in London in about 1885. And Guinness World Records recognize the Lyle's Golden Syrup as having the oldest branding and packaging in the world. So for debate whether Bass or Lyle's Golden Syrup were, who was the first true brand. But the reality is, about the same place that Fathers and Sons was written, right? Just after the Industrial Revolution, you start seeing a fiercer competition kind of taking place. Mass, modes of production start taking place. And so companies start to think of new ways to differentiate themselves beyond just the functional benefits that they had. And so branding became a huge topic for a lot of these companies. And so, you can look at Quaker, Quaker Oats as being one of the earliest brands to use, character in its packaging and branding and advertising. You look at Coke, up until, after 1996, they kind of expanded beyond just their typography, their iconic typography, into actually using their bottles as a distinctive brand asset, right? And so the brief for the bottle was the best briefs I've ever seen. A bottle so distinct that it could be recognized by touch in the dark or when line broken on the ground, right? That was the brief that they gave their agency. So now they're expanding to packaging. And then you look at today, Apple, the most valuable brand in the world, just a very sophisticated and complex brand architecture with multiple properties and distinctive assets and so forth. And so when you look at this, the history of brand has come a long way. But, the reality is when you look at brands, what effectively differentiates them isn't something that is uniquely to them. Everybody can kind of make the product, and if it's something that you create is truly unique and great, others can copy. And so uniqueness is a myth. That's just the reality. Uniqueness is a myth because it's easy to steal. And so what you have here, even if I gave a taste test between Quaker Oats and another brand, or even between Coke and Pepsi, most people won't be able to tell the difference. And so brands really need to think about how do they use communication and identity to differentiate themselves. But here's the thing: if uniqueness is a myth, you're not going to be something that you're just different, right? You have to be relatively different to your competitors. I'm going to use an example here between Instagram and TikTok, right? Instagram, Meta, is a great company that does basically get the latest ideas. They kind of copy them and make them better. But what TikTok decided to do is say, no, we're just going to do video better. And that is a relative differentiation. It's easier to make videos in a platform. The recommendations of our algorithm are better. And so they're like a better video platform. It's not that they're the only ones who make video. They just make it better. On the other hand of the coin, you have distinctiveness, right? Distinctiveness are basically those distinctive assets, brand identities that you have. Could be your logo, could be a character, could be a jingle, a packaging. Most brands we have, anywhere from 4 to 5. And you look at McDonald's, they've done such a great job with their distinctive assets and characters that today they can put up a billboard like this and everybody knows who it is, right? Not even showing the full logo, right? It just goes to show how much work they put into ingraining their identity into their customers' minds. And so, okay, you're talking about, Pedro, you're talking about social media and burgers. That's really, possible to differentiate. But how do I differentiate if I am a brand that sells commodities, such as water, right? Water is a great example. It's a commodity. How the heck do you differentiate your brand of water? Well, there's a lot of examples out there, artisanal water, purified water, Uwachina Mountains water, natural spring water. Again, very functional benefits until a company kind of came along and broke everything and said, look, no, we're not going to differentiate ourselves that way. We're going to lean into the idea of entertainment. We're not going to compete with other water brands. We're going to compete with people's social feeds. We're going to compete with what people watch on Netflix as opposed to Instagram. And that's where you kind of see the emergence of a fantastic brand that has taken this category by storm, Liquid Death, right? So Liquid Death, what they did is they just, created a bunch of characters and some really crazy kind of campaigns. They came from the punk rock world. They were a bunch of, they used to work in advertising and decided to start this water company. Nowadays, they sell, iced tea and things like that as well, but their bread and butter is water. And so they created a character like the Murder Man. They used Tony Hawk's blood to make a skateboard. They used Bert Kreischer to sell yoga VHS tapes. And they, a super interesting one, your ad here, they circumvented Super Bowl by auctioning off the biggest ad ever, as they would call it. So your brand could be on the side of a national run of Liquid Death water, which would garner more impressions than if you bought, a Super Bowl commercial for $6 million. So very interesting kind of ways. They partner with Elf Cosmetics to do corpse paint, or even Steve-O voodoo dolls. So very out to lunch. None of these other water brands are doing stuff like this. And so Liquid Death really leaning to this identity, right, of being hardcore, right? When you think hardcore and you think water, you think Liquid Death. I'm going to show you the first ad, how they showed up to market with their first ad drop, which nowadays marketers look forward to Liquid Death's ad drops. Every month or every couple of months, there's an ad drop, and is basically entirely organic because people look forward to it. And so this was how they came to market back in 2019.
Hi, I'm a professional actor. and I'm getting paid to tell you about a revolutionary new product. For years, a bunch of marketing fuckboys have tricked you into thinking that water is just some girly drink for yoga moms. Just look at all the cute brand names and dainty little bottles. Well, hold on to your hot dogs, because I got news. Water isn't cute. Water is deadly. It kills innocent surfers and snowboarders and kayakers. Every year, water is responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths. Energy drinks only kill like, what, 1 or 2 kids? So please, don't fall for the marketing bullshit. Water is not yoga. Water is liquid death. And that's why this brand needs to exist, to finally give water the ice-cold can and ice-cold name it deserves. A brand that parents will hate, but kids might love.
Liquid death, mountain water.
Made from the deadliest stuff on Earth. Please, enjoy responsibly.
Just a fantastic, brand positioning on how to differentiate a commodity. And then the results speak for themselves. Today, this brand is valued at around $700 million to $1 billion. By leaning into entertainment as a form of differentiation. And so the big lesson here from a brand standpoint is that leaning into communications in your brand identity can and will always be a timeless and protected form of differentiation and distinctiveness, and in turn, competitive advantage. And so to recap, these are the five lessons from what's going on. Short-termism, don't sacrifice long-term objectives for short-term KPIs. Media fragmentation, meet your customers where they're at. AI will make average work free. Great work still requires great people. Gaming, virtual worlds are out of sight, but increasingly gaining share of mind. And finally, brand identity. Lean into communications is a form of competitive advantage. So thank you. That was what I had. I know we're at time. There were some questions that came along. If people are really, want to stick around, I can answer them. Otherwise, we're gonna post the, we can send the answers afterwards. But back to you, Sky.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Like, I always learn something from you, Pedro. Literally walk away from our conversations going, huh. So even though I work with you, it's still learn lots. So I'm gonna pop a question over to you to answer live. So with everything being cyclical, what's your personal ratio between studying trends versus studying history, as far as how you spend your time?
I would say probably 90% of my time is on studying history. I spend a lot of time looking at that and what's going to remain consistent. Because the way I see trends is our tactics, right? And so, not every brand should use AI in their tactics. Not every brand should use let's say Roblox, for example, as part of their tactics. And so I would say it's very circumstantial, and depends on the context. So worry about doing the fundamentals right. And then you fit the trends in if they make any sense to do so.
Cool. Yeah, were there any other questions that anyone had? If you want to pop them into the Q&A. And thank you to everyone also for filling out the webinar poll. We really appreciate that. We're also, in case you missed it in the chat, we will be sending a follow-up email that will have a link to our YouTube channel where you can catch this recording. And I also would encourage you to connect with Pedro on LinkedIn. You can also subscribe to his Marketing Chronicles newsletter, which I think is a weekly. Yep. Yeah, weekly. Yeah, it comes to, I think, all of my inboxes. I think I subscribed a few times. So yeah, definitely a great guy to connect with. But yeah. thank you everyone for joining us, and watch for the follow-up email. And yeah, be sure to keep following our social channels so you can see future webinars and events that we're hosting. And yeah, a huge thanks to you, Pedro, for today. It was really insightful.
Thanks everybody for joining, and thanks Sky for moderating.
For sure. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.